and he
Sorry, Mervat, it's my fault. I forgot to
yeah,
start.
he requires a lot of many lectures, not just a tiny bit of a presentation. So we have to start with Thoth. Who is Thoth before we talk about his women or his women consorts? So the best actually description of Thoth I found in the translation of the Corpus Hermeticum, which was done by Marcello Ficino, who actually translated the Hermetic manuscripts after he found them with a priest who was in Florence, and he was at that time commissioned by the Medici to build a Platonic academy or academy for Plato. And he came across these manuscripts and realized that they were much older than Plato and much older than Moses, and they were worthwhile translating, and the Medici agreed. And that was actually the beginning of opening the whole world to Hermetic philosophy and the understanding of the Hermetic principles. But we are not here to talk about the Hermetica or what it represents and what it talks about and how it came to go to Florence and how it influenced the whole world. We just want the description of Ficino of Thoth. He said among the Egyptians, the first month of the year is named after him, and the city was founded by him that is now called Hermopolis in Greek. He is called Trismegistus because he was the greatest philosopher. So we have, according to this introduction of Thoth, he has a month named after him, which is true, and he has a city named after him, and he is the greatest philosopher or the wisest of men. So he is, in fact, we have in the Egyptian calendar, the first month of the year is named after Thoth, and it is usually from the ending of August till the ending of September. We celebrate the Egyptian New Year with the first month of Thoth, which coincides on the 11th of September. So it is a working calendar. It is an important calendar. It's not a calendar that the Egyptians stopped using. It is, in fact, the basis of the Coptic calendar, and it is the basis of the farming calendar. So all the farmers in Egypt follow the months according to the ancient Egyptian calendar. So, and apart from the fact that the first month of the year is called Thoth, so we know that he's also the deity that invented the calendar and counted the days. But before that, we know that he is the scribe of the gods, or the one that conveys the knowledge of heaven to earth and convey to humanity all forms of art and knowledge. As I said, he's the inventor of the calendar. He's also the Lord of the stars, and he is associated with the moon. He is supposed to be the deputy of Ra. If Ra was the sun, so Thoth was the moon, and he deputizes for Ra, so light, or there will be light all day and night. But also the moon is the seat of memory, and this is very important. So we need to remember that from now on, all these functions of Thoth, being the seat of memory, and also the eye restorer, because according to the legend or the myth of Isis and Osiris, in the fight between Horus, I'm not going to go into the myth and the details of it, I'm sure you all know of it, in the fight that took place between Horus and Set, his uncle, to avenge the death of his father or the murder of his father. He lost his eye and he could not complete the fight. Had it not been for Thoth, who restored the eye. And it is an important aspect of human thought, because the eye needed to be lost in order to be gained or regained as an all-seeing eye. But I'm going to talk about that a little bit more later on. He's also the harmonizer or reconciliator. In that fight between Thoth, Horus and Set, there isn't a winner. Actually, there isn't a victory for Horus, because both knowledge, I mean, you cannot get rid of injustice by being yourself cruel or violent. So vengeance or revenge is never the answer in any conflict. And that's why Thoth had to show Horus that the only way forward is to harmonize the two aspects of the self, which is the good and the bad, and reconcile these two aspects. Because we have to remember that Set was Osiris' brother, so they are the two sides of the same coin, and you cannot rid of evil just by simply killing what you think is evil. But again, we will mention that in more detail later on. He has an important function in the judgment of the dead. So he is the one who announces the verdict on Judgment Day. He is the one who is able to say if the man or the deceased was true of tongue or true of voice, which means that he actually walked the talk, that he was congruent, or his deeds and actions were congruent with his talk. He was not just talking about doing good things and nothing was happening on the grounds, which I think is a very interesting aspect as well of the Egyptian thought, that what we need to know is this person, was he true? This being true, which is the keeping or the congruity between action and talk, is integrity. And I think this is really beautiful to be the arbiter of whether you are a good person or not. Thoth as well is the Lord of Hermopolis, as we said at the beginning, and the Hermopolis is the city of the Ogdoad, so he presides over the 8 primordial forces, and again we will mention that briefly later on. He is the author of the Book of Thoth and the Corpus Hermeticum or the Hermetica and the Emerald Tablet. So the most important thing for Thoth is the word. He is the creator of the world by words. He, in the beginning, was the word. That is actually mentioned in the Hermetica. Although written, he says, words, although written by my decaying hands, remain imperishable through time, until an older haven births human beings who are worthy of your wisdom. This is what Thoth said in the Hermetica, which really says that it's all encapsulated in the word. The word has power. And that is true because the Egyptians thought of writing as a sacred act. Even the hieroglyphics means the sacred letters. So writing for the Egyptian was a sacred act. It was creative and preservative, which brought concepts of life and caused them to endure, taught people how to think of life and make sense of life, but also it gave eternal life to both the author of these ideas or concepts and the subject itself. So it is a method of eternalizing yourself by writing. The first writing was done in the tombs, and that is to eternalize the deceased, because writing, they were mausoleums of words. It was an attempt to live through this medium of writing. And then after that, of course, it was all the books of posterity, including the Book of the Dead, or Coming Forth by Day, and all the other, the coffin texts, etc., all these things, as well as the literature. So writing was very important in ancient Egypt. And that's why we have taught with the scribes, and we have beautiful examples of that. Him as a baboon was a scribe, and him as an ibis. These are the two forms, and both are symbolic of Thoth. And these beautiful statues are enduring and endearing as well, because they are so pretty. And we find that everyone tried to be a scribe, because the being a scribe was really the highest rank. The scribe of the House of Life was really the highest title anyone can get. Even the king sometimes was the scribe of the House of Life. We find here, the seated scribe here is Hormoheb, who was a general in the army at the time of Akhenaten, and succeeded him and really brought Egypt again to some sort of harmony after a lot of conflicts and problems during the reign of Akhenaten. It says, and this beautiful statue is in the Metropolitan Museum, and the words that are written on it are really beautiful. It says here, "Hail to you, Moon Thoth, who relates what was forgotten and remembers the fleeting moment." So it was not only that he was the God of the word, the beginning of life, or the creation of life through the word, but also he was the God of memory. He was the seat of memory, the one who relates what was forgotten and remembers the fleeting point, or the fleeting moment. So that is Thoth. And really the first one of his women, or his female consorts, that mimics very much that, and she is almost an avatar of Thoth, is Seshat, because she's also the scribe. Even the description of her, it says the name means she who is a scribe, or the mistress of letters. She is also the lady of libraries and of documents. She is the one who resides over the House of Life and the libraries in the House of Life. She is also the lady of the years. She records time and the movement of the stars. And she is the lady of the builders, because building in ancient Egypt, architecture in general, in ancient Egypt, followed the stars and was calculated according to the orientation of the stars. Of course, this is a huge subject, but it is an important function of Seshat. She's also the lady of destiny, and she's the keeper of the divine plan. If we look at the image of Seshat, we find a nice lady. She's dressed normally in a garment that is leopard skin, which is associated with the priests. And she was supposed to be the highest priestess. Even the scribes were called sometimes the priest, Seshat priests. She is having a very peculiar, specific crown of five-pointed star and invented inverted crescent. But she holds in her hand a palm branch, which is the symbol of a year. And if you look down, on this branch, the palmar branch, we will find the frog and we will find the shin. The shin is the symbol of eternity, that time goes round and round, it is cyclical, there is no end. But the frog is also the symbol of multiplicity and regeneration in ancient Egypt, and it is in numbers indicative of 100,000. So she's almost like holding 100,000 years and talking of with a pen in her hand. That is all her the things that determine Seshat. We find her as well under a tree in many tombs, and in this one we find Seshat and Thoth keeping a record of the pharaoh's name and the length of his reign on the sacred Persea or Eshid tree. They keep it on the leaf itself. This is interesting tree because if you look it up on the internet, they associate it with the tree of life. But in fact, the tree of life is the sycamore. The Persea is not the tree of life. It is a sacred tree, and it was used for recording the name in order to guarantee the protection of the name of the king and also the perpetuation of his name. And in fact, up until now in Egypt, even in modern Egypt, some people write on the leaves of trees. So it is an ongoing thing, not as common as it used to be, but it happens. And also you will find on the internet that sometimes they call it acacia, but acacia is different because the Persea tree, despite its importance, is actually almost extinct. There is one in the Agricultural Museum in Cairo, but it's almost extinct. Although it is a relative, or it is almost like the avocado tree. And because and why they used it in particular, because of the fruit itself was like a heart and the leaf was like a tongue. So it was actually like writing on the leaf was like speaking what is on the heart and pronouncing and documenting what you desire, what the heart desires. So this is, and actually it went on to the Greeks. So you know that Perseus, who killed the Medusa, was the name comes from Persea, and it's also connected with some planets constellation. And if we talk about planets or constellations and stars, Seshat is very important in the foundation ritual. Before the king inaugurates or the building of any structure in the country, he has to perform what is called the stretching of the cord ritual. This is usually done, a ceremony done or performed by the king and Seshat by marking 4 corners of the building that is to be built at night using the stars as orientation, and then stretching the cord after driving stakes into these 4 corners and tying the cord to link them. Again, this is very interesting because all the builders who worked with me in New Hermopolis, they all use a rope or a cord. And before we do anything, we have to do almost something like this. We don't follow the stars, but it is similar. So the vernacular builders in Egypt till now, they use the rope or the cord, the stretching of the cord ritual. So we come to the last thing about Seshat, is her crown. There isn't actually any conclusive thing about the meaning or the symbolism of this crown, which is 5-pointed star. But it says that most of the people agree that it represents, the 5 points represent the sun, moon, and 5 planets. The 5 planets are Venus, Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, and Mercury. And I used this quote because I really love it very much, especially what is said about Mercury or Hermes. But it is so beautiful. It is in the Hermetica, and it says, the sun said it would shine all day, providing laughter as a source of joy for both mortal minds and the boundless universe itself. The moon promised sleep and silence and to shine at night. Saturn offered justice and necessity. Jupiter gave peace and Mars struggle. Venus preferred love and pleasure. Mercury, who is also called Hermes, said, I will make humankind intelligent. I will never cease to benefit humanity. So I love it very much because it says something about the planets, but what is said about Thoth, Mercury, or Hermes is beautiful, about I will never cease to benefit humanity. I love this. It is from Karnak, and it shows Thoth and Seshat, and it's a beautiful representation of both of them. So we finished more or less with Seshat. Seshat actually doesn't have a temple dedicated to her. She was not known in pre-dynastic Egypt. It began to be known, or she began to be known in the 1st and 2nd dynasty. That definitely the stretching of the cord ritual was found in the second dynasty. Then we come to Maat, who is actually, I think, if this talk is about Thoth and his female consorts, I think Maat is probably the most important thing in the Egyptian body of thought. She is, to my mind, maybe far more important than Thoth. She's, of course, both of them go back to the minute Egypt was created. So it is the beginning of history. There are 4 that are very important in the Egyptian pantheon, and the whole of the Egyptian thinking process and ideas revolve around Ra, Thoth, Maat, and Hathor. These are the ones that really matter, but Maat is very elusive and very difficult to define. It is not, I don't think it is a deity as such. It is a concept. It's a philosophy. It's a way of life. We don't know. I mean, everybody knows that she represents truth, justice, order, cosmic harmony, balance, and proportion. But is she a religious doctrine that if you don't follow Maat, we are all supposed to follow Maat and practice Maat, which means practice good, doing good. And I call her the possible utopia because it doesn't, according to Maat doesn't require from humanity or humans to be perfect. She requires from them to quest for goodness or to pursue goodness in order to overcome badness or evil or ugliness or estet, which is the opposite of Maat, which means chaos. So, but if you don't follow Maat, are you going to be judged harshly? Are you going to be penalized? Or you're going to go to hell, like all the religious documents we know of? We will see. Is she legal jurisdiction? I mean, after all lawyers and judges were called the priests of Maat because she is the balance. She's supposed to offer or to be a symbol of justice, but it's not justice in a kind of a concrete way. She's justice with mercy. She's justice with kindness. She is lots of things, which is very difficult to relate or correlate with anything we know now. Although, in fact, I think she is ultra modern and she is what we need now in our chaotic life and our chaotic times and our dystopian times. But apart from the legal system, is she a moral or ethical code? Because we talk about ethics. Sometimes there are lots of things about being polite, about being decent, about being a good person. Not necessarily religion tells you about, or the legal system punishes you for not doing them. They are just decency. And there is also the political system, what is important, how the king or the head of society should govern. I think she is really a concept that is difficult to define. It is practiced more than being a set of rules. You find it within yourself if you pursue goodness. So she is a way of life that embraces all things connected with truth, justice, order, cosmic harmony, balance, and proportion. So if we take Maat and religion, we know, of course, about the judgment of the dead and the story of the heart and the feather. The heart is weighed, the heart of the deceased is weighed against the feather. And of course, it's very symbolic because even a heart of a sparrow will be heavier than a feather. An ostrich feather, which is one of the symbols, it's the main symbol of Maat. And we see Maat as well with the balance itself, so that, and Anubis, as well as Thoth, who's going to announce, as I mentioned earlier, to announce the verdict, whether the man or the deceased was true in tongue or true or in voice or not, and whether he had integrity or not. The idea is not whether the heart was heavier than the feather or equal. It is supposed to be equal to the feather, and if it is equal to the feather, that means that he had integrity, that he was truthful, that he did what he talked about. And of course, if it was heavier, that means that it was laden with wrongdoings. I'm not sure that the word sin, although when we come to see the negative confessions, the 42, the 42nd, the 42nd, 42, sorry, negative confessions, we will find that the word sin is mentioned, but I think it is in the translation. It's translated, I've seen it it is supposed to be wrongdoing more than sin, because I think sin is what we associate with the religions we adopt these days. The other picture is the 42 confessions, or the 42 principles of Maat, that the heart is supposed to, or the heart as representative of the soul. The Egyptians used the heart, not the brain, which is in our days is connected with the mind, but the heart for the Egyptians was really everything, was the mind, the heart as an organ of feelings, and also the soul, all were embraced in this thing called heart. The heart knows what the person is about. What is inside his heart tells you about the person. So the soul has to confess that they didn't do the things that are supposed to be wrong, of which we call them the 42 negative confessions, or the 42 principles of Maat. These are, I'm not going to read them all, but I think you can find them anywhere, and they say all the things that we are familiar with in all religions, including you didn't steal, you didn't kill, you didn't commit adultery, you didn't disobey the law, although actually religiously disobeying the law is not necessarily a sin. It is probably from that. That's why the interface between the legal, the religious, the social is interesting in the concept of Maat. But I need to stop at certain things in this 42 confessions. I haven't closed my ears to truth, which means that I'm not dogmatic, I'm not fanatical, I don't think that I know it all and all these things. Of course, this is not, it's neither religious, it's neither a taboo by religion, and it is not an offense by the legal system. It is something that is desirable in humanity, that they should be open to truth or open to other ideas. I have not made anyone cry. I have not acted hastily or without thought. I have not spoken angrily or arrogantly. That's very interesting. I have not exaggerated my words when speaking. I have not polluted the water, which was very important in Egypt. Polluting the River Nile was the biggest crime of all. I have not felt the sorrow without reason. This is very interesting, that I have not felt. You're not supposed to be sorrowful, full of sorrow for yourself, or make someone sorry and full of sorrow. So this is, if you remember the movie, The Bucket List, we have Morgan Freeman and Jack Nicholson, and they are in front of the pyramids, and Morgan Freeman tells Jack Nicholson, you know, the ancient Egyptians had a beautiful belief about death. When their souls go to the entrance to heaven, the guards asked 2 questions. Their answers determined whether they were able to enter or not. Have you found joy in life? Has your life brought joy to others? This is very interesting. And what is more interesting is that Hermopolis is called the joyous city. So this is again from an Egyptian text, which says, "O Thoth, take me to Hermopolis, to the joyous city where it is pleasant to live, to the well for one who thirsts in the desert." So the choice of all descriptions, adjectives, to actually use joyous is again interesting concept. So that is Maat and the religious system. Maat and the political system. We have in the Egyptian, ancient Egyptian literature, there are 3 pieces of literature that are supposed to be unique, and they are associated with the Middle Kingdom, although they may have been written earlier. And one of them is the tale of the eloquent peasant. And the tale is very simple, but it says how an ordinary, modest, humble peasant taught the highest authority the meaning of justice, or how to rule with justice. And the story goes that he was going from one place to another in Egypt, and one of the officials liked his donkey and what he was carrying on that donkey, and they stole everything from him. So he went to see the higher one, the higher official, the one who is supposed to manage this guy, but he was refused to be heard. Until in the end, this high official allows him hearing, and from what has been said, the articulation of his, or the argument he put for his injustice, and for trying to incriminate this thief and impress upon this high official that he needs justice, made the official ask the peasant to keep repeating himself, because he was very impressed by his eloquence. And this is an excerpt from the eloquent peasant. It says, this is the peasant himself addressing the high official, saying him, the one who nurtures might answers the plea who raises his voice. So you should not shut me out. You should hear me if you really nurture might. And we see that in the picture, that how might was normally used to be given. This is from the temple, the beautiful temple of City the First, it's Abydos, is amazing, beautiful picture of handing a statuette of Maat, which is almost like a reminder that we want you in office and we want you in government just and to oversee justice, and not to utter or go along with falsehoods. So this is interesting that at the time of coronation, at in festivities, to give Maat is as a present. It is it's very articulate way of saying to the rural, this is what we expect from you. So as I said, it says the one who nurtures might answers the plea of who raises his voice. Don't just judge without justice, for you are noble. Don't utter falsehood, for you are indeed the balance. So the idea of governing the society with balance is important. It's not a matter just of justice. It is how balanced. And that's why I think might is not just simply wrong or right. There is something about the concept that allows for even wrongdoing, but if it is justified, if there is a reason for it, and that's why it is achievable. It is something that everyone can pursue. Everyone can try to live according to might. This is actually the eloquent peasant, and in new Hermopolis, the place I created, we have a Thoth festival that takes place in October, not the month of Thoth. Actually, it is a revival as well of an ancient Thoth festival that used to celebrate the might and the power of the creative word, but I chose the 28th of October because it falls on the anniversary of the death of one of the famous writers in Egypt, who is also a native of Minya, the area, Thoth, who has really an important role to play, or had an important role to play in making education available and also allowing women to go to universities, and also in his writings and in saving some of the manuscripts of Naga Hammadi and all that. So it takes place on the 28th, and these are amateur group from one of the villages around us, and they did the eloquent peasant. Then we go to Maat and society, which I think is the most important one, because it is about social connectivity. This is what Asman, there are two people who are important in my dictionary and or influenced me to a great extent, Eric Horning and Jan Asman. The writing about ancient Egypt taught me a lot, and I am forever grateful to them and to their writings. And I really regard that Asman's book on Maat, which is unfortunately not translated into English. It is in German and translated into French and Arabic, but it's not translated into English for some reason. He really emphasized the importance of Maat as a social justice, as a form of social justice. It depends on connectivity, on mutuality, reciprocity, that we do things for each other, to act for each other, which is active solidarity, to speak and to listen to each other, which is called communicative solidarity, to listen to each other, to speak and listen to each other, to think of each other, which is called intentional solidarity. So this is, of course, the kind of the principles for a very idealistic or utopian society. But he captured the concept of Maat in this social justice or social connectivity. And people did not understand the idea of social justice. That's the French one. And it brings me to our days. There is a book which came out not long time ago by Joanna Massey and Chris Johnston. It's called Active Hope: How to Face the Mess We Are In Without Going Crazy. It says in the past, changing the self and changing the world were often regarded as separate endeavors and viewed in either or terms. But in the story of the Great Turning, they are recognized as mutually reinforcing and essential to one another. So the cliche that we always talk about now, if you want to change, be the change you want to see. So it cannot be done without the individual himself or herself working on themselves. The final thing about Maat, which I think is more important even than the religious and the legal and the social, it encompasses all and it embraces all, that she is the keeper of cosmic order. She is the one who changed chaos or Esfit into harmony. She is harmony. She is harmony. And harmony cannot be achieved easily. So we have the I here, and here we will discuss the relationship between Thoth and Maat and integrity and integration and remembering and recollection, which is really something. After all, we need to remember that the myth of Isis and Osiris, and what Isis did was actually recollecting the pieces that were shattered by Set of of Osiris and put it back together. This putting back together, integrating things and making it whole, this is really what Maat is about. And that brings me to another book of mine that's in Arabic, and this is the cover of the second edition, which was published or came out about 6 months ago. It says, "Why did Horus lose his eye?" A new reading in ancient Egyptian thought. And we have here Thoth as a baboon holding the eye. And we have the picture on the book is from the Book of the Dead, or Coming Forth by Day. It shows the ibis with the eye. So it's the story that I mentioned briefly when I started the talk about the loss of Horus' eye and why he had to lose his eye in order to be completed, because we don't see with our eyes, we see with inner eyes. So he had to lose an outer eye to gain the inner eye, or an all-seeing eye. So the symbolism of the restored eye is called the Ogdoad or Wadjet, and Maat actually is the word Ogdoad or Wadjet, which is the complete eye, is literally means the one that has been completed. And as you see in this picture, there is the art that is written in the doctor's prescription. So it comes actually from the Horus eye, and it shows how this eye became symbolic of lots of things. It is, as I said, it became a replacement of the sight with insight. So understanding of what the fight between Set and Horus was about, replacement of order, re-establishment of order from chaos, meaning harmony. And harmony cannot be established except by remembering, putting things together again and making whole, reconciliation, integration, and healing. So, and that's why Maat and Thoth are very, very important, because they tell us how we should live, and we cannot live except by pursuing harmony, and harmony cannot be achieved except through reconciliation, integration, and healing. So this is again from the Egyptian literature, and it says, it describes Thoth as the one who changes turmoil into peace. And we see in this one, this is obviously the picture that you see the two Habis, Habi, the god of the Nile, in a dual form, and they were tying the two ends of the Nile, Upper and Lower Egypt, which is pre-dynastic. It emphasizes the unity of Egypt. But in here we have Horus and Set, so he is actually tying the land with his own adversary, with his own rival, with his own the opposite. And it is interesting that this example that, or this picture that is symbolic of the tying of the lands, that we see in the middle, the symbol of trachea, which is a symbol of breathing. That the land unity or integration or peace or all that, it's all about breathing, ensuring balance, ensuring equilibrium, will make you breathe, will make you able to live, because you cannot live in turmoil forever. So we come to the end, which is really the Thoth and the city of harmony, or where harmony was born, which is again about how Maat integrated the opposites, the so-called the Ogdoad, These are the 8 primordial forces, and to make it simple, they are the 4 elements, water, earth, fire, and air. And the Egyptians had feminine elements and masculine elements. And the marriage of this 4 and 4 created harmony. This is actually the story of creation, the Hermopolitan story of creation. So it is the harmonious birth of the universe. So for the world to exist, it was necessary to integrate and harmonize all its opposing parts, which can only be achieved through order, proportion, and balance that are all subsumed within the ancient Egyptian concept of Maat. So where is this Hermopolis? It is in Middle Egypt. It's not Upper Egypt, it is Middle Egypt. And it is very close. It is on the western side of the Nile, opposite it, and actually reaches out to it, is El Amarna, the city of Akhenaten and Nefertiti. So of course it was called Hermopolis, as we said very early on, that the city was the city of Thoth and the city of Ogdoad, the 8 forces, primordial forces, but it was renamed after Hermes, the Greek equivalent in Hellenistic times. So this is the picture of Hermes with his winged feet. So this is Maat. So we talked about Thoth, Seshat, Maat, and the last one, who is actually not known. And if any one of you know anything about her, please write to me, because I've done a lot of research. Although in fact, she was the trigger of, she was truly the trigger of building Hermopolis, because her name, this is Nematawi, and her name says, or means, who retrieves what was lost, who embraces those in need, which is, again, it is actually the vision for New Hermopolis, is to embrace those in need and to help those in need. It is connected with Hermopolis. There is no mention of it anywhere else. And in the connection with Hermopolis as a wife of Thoth. And in fact, I came to know of her when I was reading one of Eric Hornung's book. The minute he said, or he wrote this about this deity, I just felt something, and I really feel that her meaning, her symbolism is important. It doesn't really matter how important she is, because she can be a version of all of Seshat, of Maat, of Hathor, and in fact, there are knowledge or documentations that she is a popularized version of Hathor with a sistrum crown, because her crown is sistrum, and she became important only at the time when Hermopolis reached fame, at the time in Hellenistic times. So she is the female version of Thoth in the late period and the Greco-Roman. And one day, I remember years ago, I was talking to my friend Alison Roberts, and she was saying that she wasn't mentioning Nematawi, but she was mentioning Hathor, and says Hathor was the one who brought the books to Thoth to Hermopolis. So it could be that in her version as Nematawi. So these 3 women Seshat, Maat, and Nematawi. Those, the three females, were my inspiration and greatest companions in my quest to retrieve the lost soul of Egypt, where it resides in Hermopolis, and the place that it resides in. So New Hermopolis is a revival of the spirit of ancient Hermopolis, trying to stick to the rules of Maat, Thoth, Hathor, Seshat, Nematawi, all this. So the importance of the creative word, the importance of creativity in general, how creativity can change man and society. And this is supposed to be a project that uses heritage, tangible and intangible, because it is in close proximity. In fact, it is within walking distance from what is called Western Hermopolis, which is the burial grounds for all the scholars and the priests who worked in Eastern Hermopolis. And the distance between the two, the Eastern and Western Hermopolis, is about 6 kilometers. So the Western Hermopolis, where the main priest or a scholar at the time of Alexander the Great, called Bituziris, is buried, is actually, as I said, within walking distance from this. So you can't get any closer, and you can't get any impressed by those ancients anymore than being in the vicinity of these great souls. So this is how the land was. So you can imagine what it took to create this. And it's not just this building that you saw in the picture, the previous picture. It is actually, it is an eco-village, and consists of an organic farm, eco-hospitality center or eco-retreat, and cultural space. And the cultural space is for the benefit of the locals as well as the visitors, being national, international. And in fact, the whole vision or this eco-village is really ideal for the so-called intentional community that is supposed to create something wonderful, attract like-minded people, have their own life, and pursue goodness and the principles of Maat. So if you want to read more about it, this is my book, which is actually available on Amazon, The Path to New Hermopolis. Thank you.
Mervat, that was amazing. Thank you so much. So incredibly interesting. What a brilliant talk, and very, very inspiring and impassioned as well, which always makes things a lot more interesting, I think. So that was fantastic.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for Mervat? One of the things I wanted to ask you about, Mervat, was Seshat's crown. I've read some interpretations that say that it's inverted bull horns, and one interpretation that I really liked actually was that the star was perhaps not just representing a star, but maybe representing the fronds of a papyrus plant, because I like the idea of it being a scribal tool in some way, that perhaps the words are being channeled from the heavens to the realm of mortals somehow. I quite like that interpretation, because the earliest representations of it, you can see the bull horns a bit more clearly, because I remember looking at it once and thinking, is it the breast hieroglyph? It looks quite a lot like the breast hieroglyph, but the earliest representations of that sign do show the sort of difference between each horn. So what are your thoughts about that?
Well, there are, that's why I said it is inconclusive. There are various interpretations. No, there isn't really an agreement on one interpretation. You're absolutely right. It can be like a lotus, but it can also be the horns, the inverted horns. They say that it is lunar in shape, so it is like the crescent, and it's very much, as I said, mimicking Thoth. So she has one attribute of Thoth, which is the moon, as a crescent. So there are many interpretations, but the one that I mentioned is, I find it interesting because also she was the priestess of the stars, or the lady of the stars, and also the fact that she was there all the time at time of buildings, which followed sacred geometry and followed the stars, and it was important to do that. And actually the fact that you decide on the points, the corners of the building at night in order to see the stars. So that's why, I find the sun and the moon and the 5 planets interesting.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. And I think that one of the things I've been really interested in is this this relationship between writing and the stars, and this kind of cosmic ordering that seems to be really important in ancient religions. I've recently been to the Stonehenge exhibition at the British Museum, The World of Stonehenge, which was really interesting. And it's now kind of acknowledged that Stonehenge was a calendar that marked the precession of the equinoxes. And I think this relationship that ancient people had with the stars was something that they lived by, and the stars, the heavens, were this primal form of heavenly divine writing that people like characters like Thoth and Seshat sort of personify this idea that the heavens, the stars, are a writing that mortals can take notice of in order to create more harmony and order in their life. And we know from some of these really early building alignments or stone circles, and in things like the First Nations culture in Australia, that ancient people could mark events and know when things were going to happen on Earth by marking events in the heavens. So I think that it's really beautiful, this relationship with the stars and heaven, and makes a lot of sense that ancient people were able to read the stars as a language and know about the future, from knowing when to plant seeds, or when the floods might come, when certain species might mate, or when certain other fish might run in the rivers, for example. So I think this is really beautiful, and also is an aspect of Maat, this idea of cosmic order and being in tune perhaps with the earth and the heavens to be healthy and well, is something that definitely persists later on in healing cultures, in the ancient Greek Asclepians, in the sleep temples of Asclepius, for example. So I think that's beautiful, and you put that so beautifully and inspired as well. I love it, and I think what you've done at New Hermopolis is incredible. It's just the most amazing, incredible project.
Thank you. And as a matter of fact, Earth is supposed to be the mirror of heaven. So that is what is written in the emerald tablets. So, and we have it written around the lotus pond, what is above, so below, and so it was really trying, humans, according to the Hermetic philosophy and according to the Egyptian philosophy, you are supposed to be gardener on earth. You are supposed to be co-creator. You are supposed to be able to create beauty, to beautify the world. So that's this is to pursue goodness and beauty, and even in the Hermetica there is a saying that says, "And above all comes beauty and good deed." So I think these are the things that I feel that they are things that are timeless, that they are perennial. They come, they are useful in any age and in any culture.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more with that. And I think you're doing an amazing job of creating abundance and a special oasis in your part of Egypt. And I'm not surprised so many people are interested in coming there and being part of it, because it's exactly what we need in the world right now. We need more harmony and more peace and more abundance, and we need more gardening and more beautifying of the planet. So amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing work.
Yeah, but sooner than later it has to transcend its creator, because the creator has a lifespan and it will be sad if it dies.
Yeah, I'm sure it won't, because that's one of the most incredible things, I think, gardening, any kind of gardening, and what you've done in New Hermopolis, where you've been planting some of these rare plants and these rare trees, creating shade and creating life. You've created so much more life there that life will continue to give fruit to future generations as well. The sort of classic, you need to think about planting trees to give shade to your grandchildren is a beautiful sentiment that I think you're living out at New Hermopolis.
Thank you.
Does anyone else want to ask Mervat any questions? Feel free to unmute yourself if you would like to ask. Just looking at I wonder whether Nehmataway was in somehow representative of the rhythm of life, because she had that sistrum crown, and I think that part of the principles of Maat is kind of tapping into this rhythm and pattern and order of life, and the breathing of the planet is very interesting. The breathing of the earth, as represented in that unifying symbol of Egypt, it's almost a kind of anthropomorphizing of the land of Egypt in that symbol, that we have, like you said, the trachea and the heart. So I think that's a beautiful sentiment as well.
Yes, I can't agree more. I mean, you can read into it. That's the beauty about the symbols in ancient Egypt. It allows several readings. And in my opinion, Egyptian thought in particular and ideas are still to be read and understood. Because people gave attention to tangible things in ancient Egypt and didn't really give attention or credit to the Egyptians about inventing ideas. And that's still, there is a scope for a lot of, of work in that direction. So about the rhythm, and I actually see all of them as interchangeable, all the women of Thoth and Thoth himself. I mean, Thoth could not really be Thoth without these women, especially Maat. So it is very important. And I actually, again, there is an interesting thing, about Lion King. And Lion King, in many ways, really is a modern version of Isis and Osiris and Set, and even the wise man is, or the wise animal is Rafiki, who's a baboon, and about the cycle of life and the necessity of death for renewal, and etc., etc. When it was done as a play and staged as a play, she changed Rafiki to a female version. So it is interesting because of this kind of really Thoth is inseparable from Maat, and Maat, I think, is an overseeing concept and philosophy.
Yeah, I think that this idea of harmony is something that we've lost from our modern ideas of healing. I think you're quite right when you're talking about there's this focus and this overemphasis on the tangible, on medicines, on operations, on surgery, and a real distance from thinking about the healing power of nature, of creativity, of cathartic artistic expression. And actually these things are also vital for people to really heal themselves. And I think my interest is in a lot of to do with ancient Egyptian philosophical and esoteric ideas, but I also really love the healing institutions in ancient Greece where nature provided a cure by bringing people back into harmony with a beautiful, harmonious surrounding. And I would love to see more of that in modern healthcare practices. In, you know, a hospital should be more like a spa or a retreat in nature where people can fully immerse themselves in the harmonious influence of nature. And I think for a lot of people that more conditions would be more effectively healed if those things were incorporated into healing. So I think what you're doing at New Hermopolis is really extraordinary, and I hope that your style of doing things gets appreciated and seen by people and copied elsewhere in the world as well.
I hope so. Thank you. Thank you.
My pleasure. Someone asked a little while back, where was it? Christina asked, are the eyes of Ra, Sekhmet, Hathor the same as the Wadjet?
Oh, that's an interesting one. There is a confusion, but it is not the same. The eye of Ra and Sekhmet and all is supposed to be the right eye, which is the sun. And the eye of Thoth is the left eye, which is the moon. Having said that, they are actually used sometimes as more or less the same. So it is, again, there isn't a kind of a fine, clear cut between the two. But the common wisdom that the right eye is the eye of Ra, which symbolizes the sun, and the left eye is the moon, which symbolizes Thoth, which is the one symbolizes Horus eye, symbolizes moon, and it is the one that Thoth intervened. In the other story of Ra, Sekhmet is involved.
Great. One question I wanted to ask was, you mentioned the Persea tree and how the root of that word is reflected in Perseus, but also in the Perseid constellation. And I was wondering whether the Perseid meteor shower is something that's mentioned in any of the literature or celebrated, because that also happens the middle of August. So I just wondered if that's something that ever gets incorporated into the mythologies.
No, not that I'm aware of. I think it's worth exploring.
Well, I think that so many of these gods seem to have astral correlations and relate to certain stars or certain movements of certain stars. So it's interesting to think where Thoth might be involved in that regard. Yeah. It might be a good time to make offerings to Thoth during the Perseid meteor shower. It's sometimes great in the UK, actually, the Perseid meteor shower. I did a psychedelic festival at Hermopolis Observatory a few years back, and it was during the Perseid meteor shower, and it is the best meteor shower I've ever seen in my life. It was incredible. So I wonder whether there's an element of the stars raining down on Earth during meteor showers, which obviously would have been a bit more vivid in ancient times as well, given that there wasn't any light pollution. Might have been the gods visiting, might have been perceived as the gods visiting Earth. Does anyone have any other questions they'd like to ask Mervat? Or Mervat, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
No, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you when you come down to Hastings as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
My pleasure. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
It really was great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. It's very kind of you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.